Good morning, folks, and welcome to the Sabi Sands, to Juma and Arathusa Game Reserves. For now, the weather is holding out, but for those of you that have been following the last few days, you would know that we are experiencing a cold front at the moment here in the Sabi Sands. It's normal for this time of the year, very normal weather, but it does make broadcasting a little bit difficult if it does get wet. But this morning is looking good for now. The majority of the bad weather does come from the south, which is the direction we're kind of looking in, and there are still a lot of clouds around and quite strong wind, and the strong wind can bring in the bad weather fairly quickly. But the good news is, for now we're dry and things are looking good, so we are going to continue and have a look around. I'm going to start off this morning by going to check up on the family of southern white-crowned shrike's nest. It's a nest with 4 little birds in that I saw about 5 or 6 days ago. So I'm going to head off and look at that on Shibam Road, not too far from here. And thereafter, or what we find along the way in terms of tracks or signs, we will begin to fine-tune our drive from there. It is so good to be out again. Brian's on camera today, folks, and VM's in the control. So it is so good to be out again. Out of the last 4 drives that I could have done, 3 were cancelled due to rain, so haven't had such a good strike rate. So it is wonderful to be out again. And this cool weather, provided it doesn't rain, really is the ultimate for game viewing, because it simply increases the chances of finding animals more active than when it's very hot. So there are definitely perks to this weather. But like I say, for now it's looking safe, and we should be able to enjoy a few hours before anything changes. For any new viewers, welcome on board, and just to let you know, it is an interactive safari, so you can ask questions on Twitter and email. On Twitter you would use hashtag Safari Live, and on email questions@wildearth.tv. So get those questions through, and VM's got a busy job in the control, making sure that all the receiver masts, signal masts are picking up the correct signal. So he does have quite a lot on his plate, but between checking on all the technical sides of things, he will be looking through the questions and then trying to filter them through to me as best he can. So do send through any questions, and hopefully VM will be able to find some time to get them through to me. Oh, beautiful. We have a young giraffe. What a beautiful, cool morning it is for now. And these clouds that we do have in the skyline do have some dramatic scenery. Okay, trying to think of where our best angle of viewing will be from. Should we go into the dam wall?
Even here.
Even here? Okay, cool. Okay, folks, well, we do have two hippos here that are fighting. I'm not sure the extent of their fight, but they are having an altercation, and this will be very, very interesting to watch, because when hippos do fight, it can be an extremely, extremely aggressive affair, and we may be in for a show of brute force and power here shortly. So let's see what happens. It's quite normal for animals to be in a heavy form of combat and then stop, regroup, reassess, regain energy, and then come crashing in again. So this is what they may be doing now. They may simply be having a small breather before the next clash. The Egyptian geese family is not far from us, also kind of watching on with interest. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Look at this, folks. Incredible. So now you can see those very, very long teeth that they use to try and get under one another's jaws. But this really is something, folks. And those are very sharp teeth, as you can see, and they can puncture flesh, obviously around their mouth, but more importantly all over their body. Well, aren't we lucky, folks? Who would have thought we would have started off the morning with such an intense sighting? Wow. Now, due to the depth of the water there, and it is making it difficult for them to move, but despite this they are still giving one another a good run for their money. So this is in all likelihood two bulls, or I can almost guarantee that it's two hippo bulls that are fighting. And they are fighting over this territory, the Gowrie waterhole, or this dam. Wow, look at this. Incredible. You can imagine it is a very tiring business doing what they are doing, so hence the breaks that I was talking about, but now they seem to be fairly deep into another round of action. Because we have just arrived, it is hard to establish who's more dominant and who's bigger. I'm just trying to take in this whole scene, but for now I think just watching this event unfold is going to be, wow, look at that. You see, as they do get into the shallower water, we can expect more power being exerted from them onto one another. They do appear to be coming closer towards us, which is certainly great for me with my camera, and also even with you guys, and the camera that Brian's doing a great job filming with can get slightly closer in when they do come closer. It's incredible actually seeing the waves lapping up onto the banks of the dam from all of that turbulence and movement. They're creating literal waves that are breaking onto the bank. And it's hard to see any blood, but I'm sure there is blood pouring from their mouths, but due to all of the liquid flowing over, we cannot actually see that blood very well. Now, as long as they stay head to head, it's appearing to be an even match, but if one does manage to turn one to its side and start biting down onto its body or trying to slice open their body with those massive teeth, then we could expect a potential winner that would stay in the dam and chase the other one out once he does turn it and manage to get it running away. But I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. It appears they are just having another short break, catching their breath. As you could imagine, it's very tiring business doing what they're doing, fighting in the water. Well, isn't this incredible, folks? We have got an incredible sighting here. It's the first time there's been any sign of hippo fighting at Gowrie Dam since we got here, and you wonder why today is the day that these two males have decided to battle it out. There's no evidence of any other hippos around at the moment. Any females with their youngsters who would usually spend time here may have left the waterhole due to the volatile environment that it is today. But these two boys certainly do know that it is a popular dam and it is worth fighting over. So here they are battling it out for some prime property. Beautiful, look at the rainbow over there, Brian, and I'm sure she'll be able to show that while the hippo are having a breather. There's a beautiful rainbow on our left, which is a sign of the weather we are experiencing in the area at the moment. But it's all happening here. After not being out for a few days, it's certainly great to be back with the hippos fighting and a beautiful rainbow. So potentially a few more minutes break, and then I think these these two will be back at it again. Just like when we arrived, they seem to be having a little bit of a breather, and then another round opened up for a few minutes. It really is a combination of strength and stamina, these fights, because they can go on for a long period of time. Who knows how many bouts or rounds of this they would have already been through last night, or wouldn't it be so nice to know when it did start? So I'm not sure if the Zoomy or anybody can give us some more information on when they did start fighting. Last night we were informed about this by the Zoomy, so thank you very much for letting us know about this, and we altered our plans drastically from initially going to look at a small bird's nest to hippos fighting, which I'm happy with, because the bird's nest is certainly still going to be there in a few hours' time. Altered our plans drastically from initially going to look at a small bird's nest to hippos fighting, which I'm happy with, because the bird's nest is certainly still going to be there in a few hours' time, whereas this spectacle may not. Now there was another hippo that we probably last saw a month ago that was heavily wounded. Like I say, these animals can inflict great damage to one another when they are having these fights, and if it may not then end up in death immediate death, one of these fights, but it can leave an animal with wounds severe enough to result in them dying. And we're not sure if the individual did die that we did see a few weeks ago, but it was severely damaged from a dispute. What can the geese see that they don't like? You can all of a sudden hear the Egyptian geese. Oh, it's another Egyptian goose coming in. Another two. Oh, great. So that is what got this pair of Egyptian goose all worked up. Another pair came past, obviously interested in potentially joining at the dam, but just like the hippo bulls we can see fighting over territory, the Egyptian geese have also fought for this territory, but they fight cooperatively, husband and wife, together for this patch, and thankfully they don't have to compete with the hippo. It sounds like and looks like, oh, that's a good sign, that's a territorial display, the way he's ruffling his poop. As he defecates, he fluffs his tail from side to side, and this is a dominance display. So he is asserting his dominance over the other one, but let's see what the other one has to say, or his response to that. But that was promising for our viewing. It should mean that we are in for another bout of action. Who's going to make the first move? I'm guessing it could be potentially the one on the right, due to the fact that that was the one that took the first step in spraying its feces all over the dam, and they do that in dams, and also when they're out at night on their feeding missions, they will also defecate and fluff their tail like he's doing again from side to side to spread their dung and leave a good message behind for any other hippos moving through the area. I highly doubt it's just going to end like that. And like I say, my money is kind of... I'm leaning towards the individual that was spraying its feces all around with its tail, which is the one that's just popped its head up now. So let's see if he is the one to make first contact, because he is showing slight signs of dominance. possibly still getting their breaths back, folks. If you think of just wrestling for a few minutes with, oh, here we go. But even for us, any kind of permanent hardcore exertion for even a short period of time, like what they've been doing, will really increase your heart rate, and they are essentially fighting for their lives at the end of the day. So these little breaks that we're seeing are normal and completely understandable. VM, can you copy me? Anybody in final control, are you there? VM, any feedback on when these animals started fighting from the Zoomy or anything? Okay, great. So VM says it was over an hour ago that these hippos started fighting, so that's useful information for us just to get an understanding of exactly what they are going through. The one on the right's really huffing and puffing. How will this end, folks? It's just impossible to tell. We can assume that one of them will be victorious potentially, but how victorious is hard to tell. Will he chase one completely out of this dam, or will they just retreat to opposite ends of the dam once they've established who's the boss initially? However, at the end of the day, they aren't going to tolerate one another going forward, so at some time in the near future, only one of them will be here. And won't it be an incredible thing to witness? Oh, look at that. Another great display. Well, things do appear to be cooling off slightly here, but we certainly won't be going anywhere just yet, because I'm fairly convinced that they do still have more business to be done here, and simply once they have regained enough energy, I'm sure there will be some more action for us. A lot of fighting in nature is psychological, so between these bouts that we do see, a lot of their behavior will impact greatly psychologically on their opponents, as it would for humans. So now we're just experiencing a bit of the psychological warfare. which makes up a component of the fight we're seeing, but there certainly is also the physical side that we did experience a little bit earlier, and I think we will continue to experience shortly as this morning unfolds. What a bizarre show of strength. Paddling your feces from side to side with your tail, but that's how they do it in the hippo community. So that individual that we did see paddling its feces from side to side could well be the dominant one at this stage, but at least he is assuming dominance by doing that. Is this the next round opening up here? It's been a few minutes since they last engaged. Oh! The family of geese are not sure what to do because they don't want to take their chicks anywhere into the water, so they're just kind of lurking in the fringes like this. They had just swam out a few meters and then the hippos started getting excited, so they all came back into shore as quickly as they could. Still doing very well, this family of Egyptian geese. All 7 goslings still there. So they've done a great job, these parents, at raising all 7. It's been just over 2 weeks now, I think, that we've watched them for. But they aren't having as peaceful a morning as they are used to here at Gowrie Dam. Copy, thanks, Viam.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, will this drive the one individual over the edge? This continual well, there we go. There we have it. Things are heating up again here. But for now, it still seems quite relaxed relative to how worked up they were earlier, but they can obviously build up. Incredible, folks. And it seems like the individual that has been flapping its tail is showing signs of more strength over the other individual, pushing it towards us. I'm sure they are just so tired from all of this fighting. And that's why we are seeing quite a lethargic battle, you could call it. I'm not sure if you can hear, but there is a huge amount of flatulating going on between the two of them. Which is quite interesting audio to hear in the middle of a serious fight like this. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens here next, folks. I'm not sure what to say or to predict because they both appear very tired and fairly well matched, and at the rate they're going it's hard to say. There's one with possibly a slight advantage, but as you would have noticed, it seems fairly well matched and hard to tell what the outcome will be at this stage. But despite that, we are having an incredible morning watching these hippos do their thing. The colors in the sky around us are really beautiful, and the weather is appearing like it will hold for the next hour or so at least, but there are a lot of rain clouds surrounding us, so myself and Brian will be keeping a close eye on that. But there you can see the clouds that we are seeing around us. There's some blue in the sky, which is great. We haven't had much blue sky in the last few days. Wow, this is looking good because they're getting into shallower water, and when they do get into shallower water, their power becomes increased and they can cause more damage to one another, certainly. And that is how I think this battle will be completed, is by one of them managing to get another individual into the shallows and then causing some potential damage when they are in the shallower waters where they can move quicker. Oh, we've got a question through from Cindy. Good morning, Cindy. Cindy in Arizona. Welcome on board. Welcome to the hippo fight this morning. Now, Sandy has asked whether hippos only fight in the water or if they also fight on land. In my personal history of viewing hippos fighting, it has always been in water. But that's not to say that they cannot fight on land or won't fight on land. In certain areas, especially areas where water sources will be drying out and huge competition will be put on bulls to fight for their own little territories as rivers dry out. In situations like that, we can expect to see hippos fighting on land due to the fact that there is a lack of water. And like I say, once they do get into the shallows or do chase one of them does gain dominance over the other one and starts to chase it out of the dam, the fight could continue onto land. So I think it often starts in water but may end on land, as the one individual may chase the other completely out of the watery area, be it a river or a dam, a pool in a river or a dam like this. So good question, Cindy. I think the majority of it is done in water as a general rule, because that is what they're fighting over, and thereafter potentially, once one has gained dominance, it may continue the fight onto land a little bit. And I have seen footage of hippos chasing one another on land and fighting on land to a small degree. What's that, Vim? Vim, go ahead with that message again, please. Okay, so there's confirmation from Vim that he's actually seen hippos fighting in Botswana on the banks of a river, so not in the water itself. So it does depend on the situation, Cindy. But good question, and thanks for putting that through. We've got some more of this very interesting display that we've seen of them spraying their feces from side to side with their tail, almost like a paddle. Now the Egyptian geese are attempting a crossing. This might be worth capturing, because we'll see what happens if these hippos get excited again. This is the first time they have attempted the crossing, and look at how closely the chicks are all together with the parents on either side, making sure none of them get left behind. And this good parenting has led to all 7 goslings still being raised successfully to this day. And I'm sure that was quite nerve-wracking. Since we've been here, these Egyptian geese, look at how excited the chicks are to be getting across. Awesome. Well, as you can see from the behavior of those little goslings, they were certainly excited to be on the other side of the dam after And that is exactly why, because these hippos are still creating a bit of a scene here. And if I was a little gosling, I also would have been terrified crossing with those hippo doing their business here. And folks, just to give you an idea, in my 3.5 years that I spent in the Sabi Sands, I saw hippo fighting, I think it was 4 times in 3.5 years. So what we're viewing here is very special and not something that is witnessed very often. You could imagine if animals fought every day like this, they would all be killing one another. So it doesn't happen that often that we actually manage to witness fights of this gravity and nature, and it could become a lot more heated and, like I say, result in the potential death of one of these animals, even though right now it doesn't appear to be being won by any specific individual. At the end of the day, they are going to want to have a result between the two of them, and this will cause things to get more and more heated. Wouldn't it be nice if a leopard came down to the dam now just to spice things up, or a lion? It's possible. It certainly is possible. VM's just asked us a question. The zoomies, the people who control the waterhole camera, which is just above us, in a tree above us, are asking if there's a bird's nest in the tree above them, and there's a red-billed buffalo's weaver's nest, which is just a few meters above the camera, and Brian is going to give you guys an idea of what exactly the waterhole camera looks like and where the nest is in relation to it. So there you can see the bird's nest, and you can hear the chicks within the nest. There's almost a permanent chitter and chatter from little chicks in that nest. And there's a red-billed buffalo weaver, one of the adults, taking some time out. So to the zoomies, yes, there is a bird's nest, and I hope that shot Brian just gave you gives you a good idea of where exactly it is in relation to the camera. Sadly, I don't think the camera can get up to film that area, and they've obviously just been hearing the birds and not being able to get the camera onto it. It is a toss-up what to do now, folks. This is obviously an event that doesn't happen very often, and something we should try and really make the most of. So I do want to try and stay here as long as we can to see what the outcome is, but it may not end up with an outcome this morning. They could only potentially establish who the boss is later on this afternoon, tomorrow. Like I say, I haven't witnessed enough hippo fights to be a professor on the subject, but they do seem to be slowly winding down their intensity. Although, as I say that, things start heating up again. So we are going to spend a bit more time here, and I know there are fairly quiet patches in between, but when they do start going, we are provided with some intense combat between two massive animals. And they are armed with some serious weaponry with those monstrous teeth. Now, I'm not a hippo, but when that happens, it must really make the hippo who's not doing it feel inferior. And that's why what we think is the slightly more dominant one keeps doing that, ruffling its feces with its tail like that. And there's only evidently one of them that's doing it, which is interesting. So rather than giving up completely the second one, it's still kind of putting up a fight, but not going as far as spraying its feces around like the other one. Again, difficult to tell exactly or read exactly into what it means, but it is certainly a display of a territorial display and a display of strength over another animal. Any more questions coming through, VM? VM, any more questions coming through, please?
Is your earpiece plugged in?
Yeah. Teresa from Wisconsin, good morning. Teresa's asking whether the hippos fight underwater, and not really, not from what I've seen in the past and not from what I can see this morning. And I think the reason for that, Teresa, is they do need to open their mouths in order to fight. And if they were underwater, I think they would swallow a lot of water when they do open their mouths. So even though there's a lot of water around when they are fighting here with their heads above the water, I think it's less likely to have a choking effect on them, whereas if they were to try and do it underwater, they would ingest a lot of this water, which wouldn't aid in their fighting too well. But I'm sure there are points in battles between hippos where things do go below the surface of the water, but predominantly I think, as we can see, they like to get it done above water level. But what is important to know, and what I will reiterate, is that this isn't something that we view on a daily basis or often at all. And like I said, in 3.5 years of being here, I've only seen hippo fighting about 3 or 4 times. So depending on where you are, and that is the beauty of working in Africa or at any various safari destination in Africa, there's certain areas where hippos are very common or more common than here. And with high populations of hippos, your chances of seeing hippos fighting becomes drastically increased. Whereas here we don't have huge numbers of hippo, therefore we don't get to see them interact and behave as much as areas possibly like Botswana that comes to mind. So this is something very special for us to be viewing. It really is so nice to have some cool weather that's not rainy. If it was like this every day, we would be very, very happy, because it's nice and cool with the sun's out. We've got some beautiful clouds in the sky and hippos fighting. So a great day here at Djuma. Well, folks, this is round 4 of this morning's entertainment. And like I say, when they get into the shallower water, we can expect more damage to be inflicted on one another, because they can move their bodies faster the shallower the water becomes, and therefore bite on and lacerate. They don't only bite one another, because their dental structure has 2 teeth from the bottom jaw that literally point straight forward. Those can be used almost to slash one another. It appears that the one individual has some freshly chipped teeth, which is understandable because they're Joss from Brisbane. Morning, Joss, and welcome on board. Joss is asking if hippos have any predators, anything else that they need to be concerned of other than themselves in a situation like this. And yes, Joss, occasionally from time to time hippos will be predated on by a lion, but it is a rarity, because as you can see, they can open their mouths very wide and they're a lot larger than a lion, so it's a risky business for a lion to attack a hippo. But it does happen. I've seen coalitions of male lions attempting to catch fully grown hippos, and also you get prides of big lion. Now a big pride of lion would be 20 plus cats, so 20 lion on one of these, you can imagine the hippo is going to have a lot of work to do, and the lion do stand a chance. But with smaller lion prides, it's not worth the danger of trying to catch these hippo. And obviously baby hippo, they fall into a kind of different bracket, because yes, their mother can defend them, but it would be more likely for a lion to catch baby hippo than large ones. And I wouldn't be surprised either if the sneaky leopards managed to catch a very newborn baby hippo at some stage. But yes, a lion would be the most likely predator for a hippo, but not a common one. And like I say, it's unlikely, but I'm sure leopard would have. Wow, look at this. There does appear to be some increased intensity that we're witnessing here, and I'm just trying. Oh, there we go. You see, there it's been turned, like I spoke about, and then we can expect it to come running out the water. Now what we have to try and do is potentially not get caught up in this. So I'm going to start the engine, because they could come towards us. Oh, where to go. But that is what I spoke about earlier, folks, that initial, as soon as they get turned, which we have seen here. So we can see the back end of the one here, and I just want to stay here in case the other one does manage to continue chasing it. It's hard to choose the best angle here, but let's see if the other one manages to get back into the water. So this is the one that we can see in the shots is the one that got chased out the water and is now facing back down into the dam. But will the other one be able to turn it completely? No, we just need to be careful it doesn't run into us. Look at this, folks. What a great view of this hippo. We don't often get to see them out the water. And has he made it back in? Is he going to go back in? Or do we have a victor? Look at how awesome this angle is, folks. Brian's showing you such a cool shot here. And now this individual that's walking back in, is he going to get back in? Is he going to be allowed back in for good? It appears he is. Well, I thought we had a victor there, but the individual in the water did not chase the second one far enough, I don't feel. I'm just going to try to get back onto a little bit of a better spot. Oh well, that was interesting, folks, and I'm surprised that we didn't actually get a complete victory there. I thought that we certainly might have had. Is that okay, Brian? I thought that was the deciding moments in this hippo battle. And who knows, maybe it was. Maybe now the fact that one individual did manage to actually get the other one out and running away would have indicated to this individual, this was the individual that was chased out of the water that we're looking at. And maybe that means that between the two of them they know who the boss is. But that's him vocalizing and him possibly saying, no, this isn't over, we have more to discuss regarding the property, the conflict over property here. I'm really trying to take a close look when they open their mouth through my binoculars to see if we can see any decent wounds around the mouth. There certainly didn't appear to be any on the body of the individual that was chased out the water. But so happy that you managed to see it out the water. We don't often see them out the water because they do graze on grass nocturnally. So I'm hoping a lot of you got your first good visual of a hippo out the water. Well, folks, it's been an hour since we started this morning, and the majority of that hour has been here at Gowrie Dam, Vuyatela Dam, witnessing this very interesting territorial dispute between two bull hippos. We're not sure why exactly they decided to come to blows today, but that is the case, and it appears all the other hippo that usually reside here during the day have left these two to do their business, and I'm sure we'll return at some stage, and that is why these two are fighting over it, that in the knowing that female hippo do like this pond and they will come back. The intensity is increasing, folks. It certainly is increasing. So what will happen next? Red-chested cuckoo calling above us. How are these two going to resolve this problem that they're facing with one another? A very evenly matched dispute, and thankfully at this stage they don't appear to have caused too much harm to one another, which shows how tough they are. Because if that had been one of us in the water, we would have certainly be ruled out of contention by now, whereas these two hardly appear to even have any scratches on them. I'm sure they do have a few small scratches around the mouth, but it is really interesting to note how strong their skin is and how tough they are when they are fighting like this. Let's see if we can pick up any wounds there with the binoculars. They certainly don't appear to be the biggest, oldest bull hippos that I have seen. So these are possibly two up-and-coming bulls that are still establishing themselves. They just don't seem to have enough scars and scratches on them to indicate that they would be old or very old. One's got a distinctive notch in its right ear, distinctive cut in its right ear that would certainly help us distinguish them in the future, and even now, just to keep track of who's who. The individual with the notch on the ear does appear to be the more dominant one at this stage, and if looks are anything to go by, that raggedy ear and slightly older appearance would mean that he is the more experienced than the other individual. To Adam in Mississippi, I believe you're thoroughly enjoying this sighting, and glad to have you on board with us here in the Sabi Sands and enjoying this incredible sighting this morning, Adam. So thanks for your positive feedback and glad to have you on board with us. Got some really positive feedback coming through, folks, of people just really enjoying this very interesting sighting. We don't get to see this often, and your positive feedback regarding this and WildEarth as a whole is hugely great for us out here. We really enjoy all your feedback, and we are out here to show you guys as much as we can, so thank you for your kind words. The red-chested cuckoo is still calling very incessantly. We can't see it, sadly. They are quite secretive and tend to not show themselves. But as you can hear, this individual really is giving us a good sing-song this morning. Okay. Well, they appear to... Lewis has just asked a question whether one of these two bulls that are fighting here could have been the bull that caused all the damage to the other hippo we saw a few weeks back that was heavily beaten up from a fight with cuts all over its body, very deep lacerations all over its body. And yes, it could well be. I'm sure between the hippo that are at that stage of their life where they can compete and will be driven to compete for territories, they could well come across top candidates, and these two, maybe two that are left after the third one did get ousted or chased from this dam. I'm not sure. Brian, do you know if the fight was at this dam?
It was.
So the initial hippo fight, I wasn't sure when it all unfolded. I just got to see the hippo on one or two occasions after the fight, once it had sustained all these injuries. And according to Brian, the fight did actually happen here, so this could still be the same dominant male now. The one with the little cuts in his ear, I'm guessing, is the dominant one. And it could well have been that individual that did cause all the damage to that injured hippo that we have lost track of. We're not sure where it is, if it's still alive. It's literally just gone off the radar, which is possible. There's large tracts of area that we can't get to out here, and that's also important for you guys to know. We can follow the animals as close as we can, but only up to a certain point. There are some areas which are simply inaccessible to us. But that is a very good question and good point that you've raised, and it could well be the same individual that we see fighting here that did have a big fight and came out on top, considerably so, of the other hippo, which was hugely damaged. It had a lot of cuts down its body, and I can't help but feel that it has passed away, but I could be wrong. I could well be wrong. But now what a sight we do have here, or we have had this morning with these hippos fighting. From the moment we arrived, when they seem to kind of be between fights, resting, up till now, they've probably had about 5 or 6 different almost rounds, as you could call it, as if they were boxing. And the rounds tend to be around a minute, and then they get tired, regroup, regain their breath, and then go in again. But it's hard to tell how much longer it will continue this morning. I'm guessing, and I could well be wrong, that things will potentially subside today until this afternoon, and this afternoon things could start getting heated up again. But then again, that is just my relatively uneducated guess, as I have not seen hippo fighting on very many occasions, and therefore have got limited knowledge to go back on regarding this subject. But potentially, yeah, that they would calm down today and then potentially increase their intensity this afternoon. I was really surprised earlier that when it did chase, when the one did manage to turn the other and get it out the water, I thought it would have continued chasing it and make sure to get rid of it completely, but it didn't take that opportunity, and I'm not sure why, but now they are both back in the water. There's a little wagtail hunting here. on the fringe of the water. That's quite pretty. There's a bird called a pied wagtail, an African pied wagtail. Really pretty little bird, and it's aptly named because, as you can see, their tail does do a lot of wagging. Stand by. Come on, be a wagtail. Well, this wagtail has just decided to temporarily stop wagging its tail, but they do typically wag them a lot. And if we keep watching it, we will see it run quite quickly. They chase their prey on foot. There we go. They've got an incredible turn of speed. And these specific individuals do associate themselves with water. They're often around rivers or dams, the pied wagtail. And they often do also wag their tail, but this one evidently... Oh, there we go, there we're getting a bit of the wagging. That's better. That's more typical of their behavior. And you can probably hear the hippo getting worked up, so we're going to leave the wagtail temporarily and see what the hippo have decided their next move shall be. Which is initially to go underwater again. Thereafter, let's see, they've seems to have been on a break for a fair amount of time now, so possibly around 7 or 8 is coming up. I've lost track, but like I said, there've been about 5 or 6 bouts of fighting of varying intensities, only one of which did show complete dominance over the other, and it did manage to get it out the water but didn't chase it away completely. Brian, what do you think is going to happen here? Do you think they're going to slow down, or do you think we should stay?
I don't know, this could carry on for quite a while maybe, potentially.
You see, because if we were to leave now and things were to get very heated, obviously Brian and I...
That's the climax of the story.
Exactly. So, okay, well, we're on the same page there, which is good. So, folks, do bear with us. Like I say, we don't see hippo fighting very often, so I think it is important for us to document and show you as much of this as we can, because, well, firstly, I don't know what else is out there. I haven't had any other game drive vehicles this morning. Possibly guests in the area have been safaried out, and that does happen, and when weather does... Okay, good. Well, there's a lot of people on Twitter mentioning we should stay, which is great. We're all on the same page, and myself and Brian are comfortable. We're in stone's throw of the lodge, so we could even ask VM to bring us down a cup of coffee if need be.
And some rusks.
And some rusks. VM's just double checking how many sugars we like in our coffees and then sending them down for us. Only kidding, it would be a little bit dangerous for them to walk down here with a coffee tray. But we are very close to the camp and we're in a good spot here, so we shan't be going anywhere at this stage. And like I say, I haven't heard any exciting updates on the Game Drive channel, so we're not missing out on anything else out there that we know of. My main goal for this morning, and for those of you who were here as we got mobile, was to go and look for a small family of birds called white-crowned shrikes, and we found their nest about 5 or 6 days ago, and there were 4 little chicks in there, very cute little bowl-shaped nest. And that was going to be the initial plan this morning before VM let us know that there was some action here at the Juma waterhole. So we did a U-turn, nearly lost Brian in the process, and rushed along here as quick as we could to not miss out on anything. I didn't know the gravity of the fight that was underway. All VM said was hippos fighting at Gowrie Dam, and that was all the information I needed to rush over here. And that is just so often the case. We make some kind of a plan as to what we want to do, what our goals are, and before we've even got close to achieving the initial plan, something else pops up, something else exciting, diverges us from initial plans. But when it's something like this morning, it certainly is not a problem at all, and we can go back to the bird's nest at another stage. Oh, look at that. Just as we thought things were calming down, they erupted from out of the water. And surely it's time for another round. Oh yes, this is sounding and looking promising. Listen to the waves that have been generated. You can hear lapping up onto the bank. Incredible. I mean, that gives you a good idea of their size, folks. For two of them to be moving around like that, creating the seismic ripples, really does give you an idea of the water they're displacing as they move. Okay. I certainly am keeping in mind that if things do get seriously heated and they do chase, one does manage to chase one out the water towards us, we wouldn't really want to be in the vicinity in any way of them. We're not sure what may happen. Possibly the one that's being chased out could vent its anger on us. And I think the chance of them flipping this vehicle that we are in is fairly good, if not just plucking one of us off it. So I am bearing that in mind, because I wouldn't like to be bitten by a hippo, or let Brian be bitten by one.
Be plucked off the vehicle by a hippo.
No, it wouldn't be a good end to the morning or the year. So it is something I am bearing in mind, folks, especially when they came out the water earlier. I wanted to show you as much as possible, but I also didn't want to put us in any danger, because you really just don't know what they might do. So what's best is to understand what they can do to you if they want to, and then act accordingly. The ground is also muddy from all the rain we've been having, so I have factored that into the escaping equation. It's not as easy to escape when there's a chance of you getting stuck or sliding or slipping about. Should we watch the wagtail again, Brian? It seems to be having a Oh, it's just down there to the right. It's seems to have caught onto something quite big here. It's just busy dispatching it, as we can see. Making sure it's dead. Looks like it could have been a dragonfly.
I think it is.
Yeah. Interesting. So, dragonflies for breakfast. Why not? Oh, okay. Bit of a marinade. Dragonfly marinated in dam water. Irresistible. So let's watch it though. It doesn't seem to have swallowed it yet, and it may just be making sure it's dead. Oh, there we go. Now it's gone. Obviously just wanted that marinade to soak in for a while before consuming it. And let's see what it catches next. They are really cool to watch, and it's going to be difficult for Brian when it does do a longer chase. They do move incredibly quickly. We're trying to balance up showing the wagtail hunting, which is entertaining, and all the hippos fighting. And because the hippos have been a lot of all talk, no action in between bites, we are just going to wait for them to engage before panning across to them. But Brian's getting a feeling, I also got that same feeling, that there was an imminent engagement, but they have toned it down ever so slightly. Go away bird crying in the background. We had some good bird calls around us this morning, and most mornings at this time of the year we are very fortunate with the bird song almost throughout the day, unless it's very hot. Then the birds tend to keep quiet for a while, but in the middle of the day, but typically there's a chorus throughout the day in summer. Anna Marie has just asked a question all the way from Cherry Hill. Good morning and welcome on board, Anna Marie. And the answer to your question of how big a bull hippo can get is around the 3,000 kilogram mark, so about 6,000 pounds, and just over that roughly, 2.2 pounds to a kilo, so around 6,000 pounds as a rough weight for bull hippos. I personally haven't weighed one, but that is the figure that's quoted in textbooks, and I'm sure it varies greatly on individuals and different areas. But a good question, and I'm not sure if you did manage to hear the waves lapping up onto the bank earlier, but it is understandable if there's essentially between the two of them 12,000 tons of water being displaced, hence the small waves we heard crashing up onto the banks of the dam after they had exploded in another bout of fighting. But thanks for that question, and keep the questions coming, folks. On Twitter it's #SafariLive, and on email it's questions@wildearth.tv, and VM will do his best to get as many of those questions through to me as possible. Folks, just to recap for any of you who have just joined, we have been here since basically the start of drive, so Chris Copper, good morning Chris, one of our regular viewers. Welcome on board this morning, and I'm sure you're enjoying this. Chris has asked whether hippos' teeth continue growing throughout their life, and I'm not entirely sure if they do, to be honest. They do grow incredibly long, but I'd like to think that there would be a limit to how long they grow for. However, I do not know the answer to that question, Chris. So if anyone does have easy access to the internet, possibly they could Google that or try and establish any definitive answer to that question, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm inclined to think that they would have to slow down or stop at some stage, but that's just my initial thoughts, and I'm not entirely sure. So any further feedback on that would be great. And Chris, sorry that I can't answer that question exactly, but that's the great thing about you guys asking questions. It does. Okay, well, Alex, who's come through to work this morning as well, is checking up on it for us in the control. And the hippo have evidently got a bit more excited about something. And will it result in some more action for us? Let's wait and see. It's interesting that we haven't heard them vocalize more this morning. The only vocalization we've heard was actually from the individual that was chased out the dam when he was re-entering it, so that is something quite interesting to take note of. I would have potentially expected a bit more vocalization from the two individuals. Like I say, a lot of their disputes and a lot of disputes in the animal kingdom are a lot of the time psychological, a combination of psychological and physical. And these psychological or the psychological component is brought up in different ways, and that could be of them vocalizing louder than one another or more than one another to indicate that they're in charge, or signals like them flapping their dung from side to side. That's another territorial kind of display. Opening their mouths very wide to display their teeth is another show of strength. So there are these various displays or signals they can do that are not physical, but still show strength or dominance over other individuals. The most common of which we've seen today has been certainly the tail flapping of dung from side to side. So that is what we have seen the most of in terms of the psychological warfare. But in general, folks, I think it is fair to say that the intensity is subsiding as the morning progresses, and especially since the one individual did manage to get the other one out the water, which I'm sure was a large personal victory and reassurance that it is certainly dominant over the other one, but the other one didn't leave for good and is still backing himself with a chance of staking claim to this beautiful stretch of water that they are fighting over. It's incredible how they almost seem quite civilized with one another between the bouts. I think with us, if you were to take boxing as an example, or a relative example, I mean, boxers in a ring have got an umpire or a judge making sure that they stop when they need to stop and continue at the right time and everything's fair. But these two just have themselves, which is for me is interesting to see that they are almost at peace with one another between the bouts. I'm not sure how exactly how and when they decide to re-engage, but there's... Oh, great, we got an answer on the teeth question. Go ahead with that, VM, thank you. Okay, cool. Thanks very much, VM. Well, folks, and Chris, most importantly, who asked the question regarding the teeth, Alex and somebody, I think Sparrow, I forget the first name, sorry, VM will remind me, has confirmed that their teeth do grow throughout their life, but are just worn down. Labora Sparrow, thank you very much for your help on this matter. And their teeth do grow permanently, and in retrospect it does make sense because they would occlude against one another, they would rub against one another, therefore keeping them worn down to manageable length. But thanks very much for all your help on that and for clearing up with me. And Chris, you've got your answer fairly quickly, which is great. I think I may have just spotted another oxpecker's nest, but I'm just going to wait a second or two to confirm on that. They nest in cavities and dead trees. We found one close to the hyena den site, the old hyena den site that's evidently not active at the moment, so it hasn't been active the last few times I've been there. Well, the blue sky that we saw earlier has now gone, and we don't really have any blue sky. We are completely surrounded by clouds, but thankfully for the time being they don't look to be of any concern to us. However, I have a strong feeling that between drives today we will get rain, so I think we should be okay until 9 o'clock this morning to finish the morning drive. But thereafter I am concerned about what's going to happen later this afternoon and what exactly is going to happen with these two right now. snorting at one another. Come on, give us one last show of your strength. And ideally, one of you lay claim to this dam once and for all. But no, not yet. We've just got a question through from GJ in California. Morning, GJ, and welcome on board. And GJ is asking if these two are siblings that are simply practicing for a future dispute or a more important dispute in later life. And this could be the case, GJ, but I find it highly unlikely that it is. Again, I'm no expert on hippos fighting, but if these were just two siblings playing around, I'm sure there'd be other members of the raft of hippos in this dam, and it wouldn't be as intense as the fight we are experiencing. At any stage, GJ, this could turn from being relatively calm and in control to the complete opposites. But what would cause that, I'm not actually sure. So what would trigger that change in intensity and ferociousness of this fight? But I do understand where you're coming from. It doesn't seem too intense, but this is often how fights in the animal kingdom play out. It takes time and many different attempts between one another to establish who's dominance. And ideally, they'd be able to establish dominance without one individual causing huge damage to another. However, in a well-placed bout, when it's equal, either one will want to stand down, and therefore it will result in it becoming a potentially fatal fight. Oh, there's an oxpecker that's just landed on one's head. That is not the place where you want to be. It's a dangerous environment. Is it an oxpecker? Let me just double check. Yeah. Private island. Looks like a young oxpecker. Doesn't have its full adult plumage or coloration. Its beak isn't bright yellow. Oh, that was awesome. Its island just disappeared. Now, so yeah, GJ, a good question, and it could potentially be the case, but I would assume that these are not siblings. They possibly grew up in different places, or even if they did grow up together, they've got to a point now where they have realized that there's not enough room for the two of them here. Oh, there we go. Dave on Twitter has just put through a very interesting fact for us regarding hippo ivory, and that is that George W. Bush had his dentures carved out of hippo ivory. Now, just a random fact, but an interesting one at that, considering we are seeing George Washington, was the individual who had his dentures made out of hippo teeth. And just an interesting fact that is relevant considering we are watching a lot of hippo teeth this morning, a lot more than we usually see. And you can see some blood, I mean nothing serious coming from the jaws of these animals, but that is understandable considering how they have been crashing into one another. Surely one of you guys have just got to establish who's in charge. One of you's got to accept that you're not good enough. But like I say, if it's a well-managed fight, just as it would be with humans, with no person willing to stand down, it could go on for a long time, and to kind of a point of no return potentially for either one of these individuals. But let's see what happens now that they are getting onto the shallower section, it appears. It is at times like this where one may turn the other and get it out the dam, but as we did see earlier, the individual that did prove dominant for a short period of time and turn the one and get it running out the dam shortly stopped its chase or charge and didn't continue to chase the individual away for good. More tail flapping, or dung flapping. It appears that it may have run out of dung, because that was just a tail flap with no dung being swished from side to side. That also that interesting mouth movement that they do to soothe the little cuts and sores from the fighting, or to entice the other individual in. What is going through their heads? Oh, well, the oxpeckers are back. They're coming in numbers now. There's 4 that have landed collectively, all on the one individual. They're taking sides, it appears. I think they've simply chosen that one because he was more submerged out the water, or less submerged in the water, more submerged out the water. A bigger island on which to beach themselves. Wow, look at that, folks. Look at this. This is serious now. This is serious. He's really got him coming towards us here now. And that was one of the most powerful displays certainly that we've seen exerted between these two. And is he going to continue the struggle out the water now? Will he continue to force it out the water? No, it looks like the other one's managed to regain some strength, and also I think because it has the bank of the dam in its favor. Wow. Now you saw how quickly the one individual managed to force the other one in one direction, and he really did have the upper hand, but it did turn at one point, and now the individual that was getting taught a lesson has evidently pulled back a few notches. But what we have is certainly seen as an increase in intensity. Incredible. The problem is they do get tired, understandably, and now, even after that very intense battle, they need a small break now, it appears, to regain their breath and their strength. I'm just hoping they aren't going to run into us at any stage, but I'm mentally prepared to get this vehicle started and out of here as quickly as possible. It's always the same individual that is doing the tail flapping of dung. And that is the individual that did get chased out the water and doesn't have a notch in its ear. The one with the notch in its ear does appear to be the more dominant, I think, but I am losing focus of what's going on here as they do begin to fight. But I will be able to look back at the photographs and, oh.
We have a victor. Maybe not.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because now I've noticed that it was the one without the notches in its ears that got the better of the one with the notch in its ear. So they are very evenly matched, these two. Because on one occasion, the individual with the notch in the ear managed to chase the other individual completely out of the water. And now in this case, the individual without the notches in the ear seemed to win that round fairly convincingly. Doris from Kentucky, good morning. Doris has just provided us with some interesting information on this hippo. And Doris has been watching WildEarth for years and remembers that there was a hippo at Gowrie Dam with a notch in its ear a few years back when they were last filming here. So it could well be that same individual. Thanks for that, Doris. I will definitely chat with Mark, as Mark was here back then and he may know more about this than myself. Well, he definitely will. So we will ask and maybe try and see in the archives if we can establish if it is the same individual. Because wouldn't that be nice to know that he has been dominant here for the last few years and now is potentially going to lose or regain control of this dam, but it does have competition. Dave Curry from Toronto. Good morning, Dave, and welcome on board here. Dave is asking how serious these fights can be with regards to injury, and the answer to that is very severe, fatal. Not in all likelihood immediate death being caused by a fight, but there's a strong chance a loser will limp away with wounds that will, in a very short space of time, cause it to die. They can really cause huge lacerations, deep lacerations on one another's bodies, and these can then become infected and result in death. So they certainly can result in very, very fatal circumstances, these fights. But how this one is going to end, we're not too sure. It's not always that they do end in a fatal nature. And this one certainly doesn't look like it is at that level yet. They've hardly inflicted any damage onto one another, but that could change. That could very well change. And then another part of Dave's question was asking whether flood or drought causes more damage to various animals. And I think that question depends on the extent of the drought, the extent of the flood, and the exact animals that are being spoken about. I'm guessing you are talking about hippos, and floods can cause trouble for hippos. Too much water can wash baby hippos away. But I think drought in general would be more severe to hippos, because without any water they will not manage. Their skin won't cope in the heat of the day of the African sun. So they do need water, and therefore I think a drought would in all likelihood cause more damage to a hippo population than a flood. But yeah, thank you for that question, Dave, and welcome on board. Let's see what happens with these two and what injuries they do sustain over the next few hours as they battle it out. But this could go on for days, not just hours. But we will certainly be showing you as much as possible. And the great news is when myself and Brian stop filming, the zoomies on the waterhole camera will continue monitoring these hippos' interactions throughout the day. So if myself and Brian aren't here, that's not to say that these events won't be captured or able for you to be viewed. Okay. What next? Keeping an eye behind us, making sure there's no rain creeping up on us, but it's still looking good for now. Oof, it's just so brutal that the way they fight. Oh, now they're getting out the water. This is going to be good, folks. This means we can see something very interesting here shortly. Let's watch what happens here. Wow, look at that. Listen to that power. Their teeth rubbing together. There you can see some blood on the two. Not much, but it is there. But this is now where they can really start causing damage to one another. When they're out the water and they've got full strength, you can see a lot of blood dripping down their chins now. But this is kind of what we were expecting, folks, for them to get out of the water. And that's when they can really cause damage to one another, but it seemed fairly even there. It did seem fairly well matched. So this is going to go on for a while until one of them tires and starts losing strength. But as we could all see there, very well matched, and still a long way for these two to go before they work out who's boss. Wow, this is incredible. Certainly the best hippo interaction I've ever seen, or hippo fights I've ever seen. So I hope you're enjoying it, folks, because I certainly am, and I haven't seen anything quite as dramatic as this regarding hippo fights. Shame they just are so tired now. Have you seen hippo fighting before, Brian?
This is my first time.
Well, we've hit the jackpot then. When they get into the depths now, things typically tend to calm down to a degree. However, after their last very intense bout, which was probably the most intense we've seen this morning, we may expect a slight change in their behavior and for them to potentially carry on without a break, which they've been taking every few minutes. More breaks than fighting is certainly how the morning has been spent. We've been here for close on 2 hours now, and of those 2 hours, I would say possibly 15 minutes of that has actually been accumulative fighting time. The rest of the time they are sizing one another up and regaining strength. But this does seem to be one of their longer rounds. I'm going to have a lot of photos to play with after this, but these sightings don't happen very often, so worth trying to capture as much of it as we can. What would be ideal is if they came out of the water quite close to us here, so that we could get some close-ups on their mouth, but that would be hair-raising for myself and Brian, and I probably in all likelihood would start moving the vehicle as they started getting any close to us. Yeah, it does appear that they are having a small break between rounds again. So you can expect a few more minutes of relative peace and calm. Although it appears that this no, just swimming around a bit. The one hippo kind of was heading straight towards us at one stage, so that did get my attention. I thought it was beginning to come and take out some of its anger on us. Pick an easier opponent, which we certainly would be. You wonder what those loud huffings and puffings mean to one another. Sorry, VM, if you could just go with the name, please, that would be great, again. Well, folks, somebody from Canada, I think it's Liz from Canada, has...
Lynn with an N.
Oh, Lynn. Lynn with an N from Canada. Morning, Lynn, and welcome on board. Thanks very much for the research you've done, Lynn. Lynn has looked back into some old photographs of the hippo that used to live here at Gowrie Dam, and the individual that we can see here now is different to the individual that also had notches in his right ear, but according to Lynn, the notches aren't exactly the same, and therefore we can assume that this is a new or different hippo, not the one that was viewed at this dam a few years ago. So thanks very much for that information. See if we can get that heron hunting there in the background, Brian, while they... So folks, it's all happening here at WildEarth Dam. There's a grey heron hunting at the moment. So we'll stay on that for a few seconds, because if we're lucky we'll get to see it, and it looks like it might be about to strike at something. We might get a kill while these hippos regain strength for their next round. They dart that sharp beak of theirs into the water at incredible speed, and either spear their prey or sometimes actually manage to catch it between the top and bottom bill. But it's certainly very focused on something. Here we go. Come on. Doom. Well, it definitely got something there. It was hard for us to see, but a small fish. Another one. Well, it's picking on some small prey this morning, but we're getting a good idea of how quickly it can use that beak. I'm not sure whether it's tadpoles or small fish. It's always funny watching them when they do catch a big prey item, getting around the tricky deal of trying to swallow something whole through that thin little neck. Can provide us some entertaining viewing. Okay, well, good to see a little bit of hunting this morning, albeit it's a grey heron for little fish that we can't even see. Like I say, the hippo do appear to be having a little bit of a break between fights. As soon as they do increase their intensity, which they tended to do every few minutes or so, every about 5 or 10 minutes they pick up the intensity again. Wow, what a beautiful morning, folks. We haven't moved very far from starting at around 6 o'clock. We headed out in the hope of getting to some birds' nests, but we hadn't been on drive for longer than a minute, I don't think, when we got the message from VM alerting us to what was going on here. So we've basically been here for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and we've moved once. At one stage the hippos did manage to, well, it's happened twice now, but initially there was one chase where one individual gained dominance over the other, and the one ran out the water, and we had to reposition to get a shot. So other than that, one move and then moving back to here, we haven't moved very far this morning, and it'll potentially be myself and Brian's second drive where we've almost spent 3 hours in one place or with one animal. And in this case it's with hippo. The last time we spent 3 hours in one place was, or with one animal, was with Quarantine, the male leopard. Either way though, it is a great opportunity to be able to spend this amount of time with animals and really get to understand their behavior and learn what you can from this unique interaction, because it doesn't happen every day. And like I say, folks, as soon as we start thinking, well, things are calming down a bit, they may be slowly tapering off things, and then all of a sudden they pick things up again and they're back at it. Earlier they were out of the water completely, and that's when we can expect to see the tables turn drastically, because it's when they are out the water that they are their most strong, their quickest. So if one does manage to get the upper hand on the other, it could then continue to create, I think, quite a lot of damage in a short space of time. But once they head to head in the water, it's very difficult for them to change that position or get into a dominant position where they can damage and or chase off their opponents. So it's on those stages when they get out the water that we can expect to see some serious developments in this battle. But I think it is going to take quite a lot longer, and they're both to still be simply too evenly matched. But that could change, and it will change in a matter of time. It's just we're not sure how long it is going to take. But at the end of the day, one of these is going to be the victor and one of them will be the loser. So won't it be nice for us to find out who it is? Oh, a bit more huffing and puffing. This could mean the start of another round. There appears to be a little bit of movement, but no confrontation. The sun is poking through beautiful now in a tiny gap of the clouds. There's probably an eighth of blue sky out of the whole skyline that we can see. So the weather is up and down, and when the sun does come out briefly, the temperature does increase dramatically, which is surprisingly quite nice to be saying that it's nice to be warm here, because we usually do battle with the heat at this time of the year here. So the colder we are, the better. But this morning driving into work certainly was quite fresh. Good morning, Ellen. Ellen's just sent through an email asking whether there are different stages of fights between hippos and different levels of intensity. And Ellen, there certainly are. These two mean business. They're not playing around here. They're not practicing for another day. I think simply what's going on is that because they are very evenly matched at the moment, we're not being shown who is more dominant, but it will get to a point where one of them will gain strength or stamina over the other, and when it does do that, it will do its best to put in some serious attacks and try and injure its opponent as best as it can to ensure that it does gain victory over this dam. This is by no means, in my mind, a play fights or practicing for later years when they're grown up. These are two adult hippos that are simply very well matched, and due to their well matched nature of the fight, there's no evident winner at this stage, but they do in my mind appear to be at the initial stages of a fight, and I think as time goes by it will become more intense. But Ellen, it is a good question and good points. It's hard to tell how much more heated this fight will get. If they're both stubborn and they both don't want to leave, it could result in one being heavily damaged by the other before retreating. Or on the other hand, one could all of a sudden realize that he's picked on the wrong opponents, and it could run off into the bush. So it's hard to tell which way it's going to go. But at the moment we're in the middle of a very interesting situation, and it will be more interesting to follow closely as to what happens next. And that we shall do. But thanks very much for that question. Ellen is one of the regular viewers, so welcome on board, Ellen, and thanks for your question. What are you two going to do next? So happy that it's been dry, folks. Both myself and Mark have been, and everyone on the team have been frustrated by these rainy conditions. We don't get out and get to show you as much as we would like to, not nearly as much when it is rainy. So despite the weather being pretty gloomy today, with chances of rain later, I'm just extremely happy that we don't have any rain now. But I do fear that this afternoon it may change. Anyway, we will cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, we've just got to hope that these hippos can make up their mind as to who's the boss in the next half an hour or so. That would be ideal for us. If not, if they could pause on any of their potential fights that they were planning on having until 4 o'clock this afternoon, they could kick it off again after having a few hours break. That would also be nice for us, but it's not going to happen. They will do whatever pleases them. Oh. Is this the final bout? Is this going to be the one that decides who the boss is? I doubt it, but it could be. Any of these bouts now could result in one of them being the victor and or the loser. It's so difficult to tell which one's bigger than the other, even when they were out the water. But it would be such an interesting thing to know which is bigger, and if so, if one is considerably bigger, how much bigger exactly. But from what we've seen, it's been a very evenly placed match. They've had turns of being in a dominant situation. but nothing conclusive for us to make any decisions on. Certainly not an easy bout to be umpiring. Ava from Oklahoma, good morning and welcome on board. Ava's asking if the loser would be allowed back in the pond, and I would tend to think that the answer to that would be no, the majority of the time. However, if a second bull acts submissively and stays on one corner of the dam and doesn't interfere, doesn't go close to any of the ladies, and doesn't try and assert any dominance or act like it's dominant, then it may be tolerated to stay in the dam, but it would have to behave accordingly. And by behaving accordingly, it would have to be almost completely at the opposite end of the dam, away from any of the females that the dominant male would certainly be laying claim to. So the likelihood of it happening is slim, but it could well be tolerated in this dam going forward if it acts accordingly. But I'm guessing it will, in all likelihood, move off and find itself a new patch of land. But good question, and I think the strong likelihood is that the loser will leave the dam, but there is a chance that it could be tolerated to stay. But a lot would have to change in terms of its attitude and behavior relative to what we're seeing now. The herons moved slightly. It continued to feed on those small fish or tadpoles, whatever they were, we couldn't see. But there it was in deeper water. Now it has seemed to have moved into shallow water, potentially hunting a different kind of prey. Let's see what happens here. It is intent on something. It's an incredible ability to be able to hunt in water this murky, because how they even see what they're going for a lot of the time is a mystery to me. They do use their feet to help sense and feel anything moving in front of them, and I think they just stab their beak in the general direction of any potential movement, hoping that they get lucky. But oh, it certainly requires a lot of concentration. And if we're lucky, which we have been this morning, it'll continue to show us the finer skills of a heron hunting. But we needed to try and take on a larger prey item for us. It'll be more entertaining, at least if we've got an idea of what it's feeding on. Let me get my binoculars and see if I can in any way tell. No, even with my binoculars I can just see it stabbing in to the water, but can't actually make out what it is feeding on. They're tiny, whatever they are, but they are, I guess, all adding up. Okay, some more huffing and puffing here from the hippos. It seems like they're getting worked up for another round of entertainment for us here. Well folks, we've got about half an hour left, and even though for now it appears that things seem to be calming down, we said that earlier and then we're surprised with a very intense battle or two, so we will be here for the next half an hour until we go off air, until this afternoon's adventures. But just to let you guys know that we will be here. So don't expect any great changes unless the hippos, of course, increase the intensity of their fight, which, from a viewing perspective, I do hope for. I don't necessarily want either one of them to be harmed or either one of them to be the winner, but at the end of the day, they are going to need to establish this between one another, a winner and a loser, and whatever it takes for this to happen will be nice for us to see. It's so nice to have this waterhole camera here providing us with information like that these hippos were fighting this morning. Without that kind of information, even now, if you were to drive past and stop for a minute or two, we would assume that these individuals are just minding one another's business. So another lesson for us to spend as much time as you can in sightings to actually understand exactly what is going on. Okay. This is interesting because we've hardly heard them vocalize since we've been here. There's only been one vocalization. This is the second time they vocalized. So maybe that does mean they're upping the ante. Very interesting vocalization. Is my kind of similar impression. And we just heard one let off relatively soft call in terms of volume, not nothing too serious. They can get very deep and loud, those calls. What are you two hippos going to do about this conundrum you've got yourselves into? Because surely you can't call it quits now. So how exactly are you going to establish who the boss is? Look at this weaver. There's some buffalo weavers flying around with massive branches in their I think it's Dan from Baltimore is asking how deep the dam is, and basically wherever we can see the hippos, Jan from wherever it was that I just mentioned, it slipped my mind, sorry, but Jan or Yan, welcome on board, and Baltimore, and you are interested in knowing how deep the dam is. Now basically, wherever we see the hippos putting their noses up and essentially showing us their heads, we can assume they're standing there, but not vertically. They just would be pushing up off their back legs to get their head out the water, but they don't float, so wherever we do see them, they are standing on the ground. So not deep at all. I'd say the deepest this dam is 1.5 meters, possibly 2 meters at its deepest points. But no, not a very deep dam. Deborah from Louisiana is asking if hippos act the same way as lions and leopards do, in that if a lion or a leopard, or a cheetah for that fact, comes across a female with cubs that have not been sired by himself, they'll kill those cubs, therefore releasing the obligation of the mother to raise them, allowing her to come into season and raise cubs of the male who is currently there. So with hippo, I'm not entirely sure if that does happen. It could well be that a bull hippo will come in and kill tiny calves that are reliant on their mothers still, and that way release that mother of a responsibility to raise that calf and then allow him to get his blood into the system. It could well happen, but I'm not entirely sure if it does happen with hippos. I wouldn't be surprised if it does though. So something that, again, if anybody could try and do some research, or if anybody's got some first-hand knowledge on that, it would be great. But I personally haven't seen enough of hippos and of their behind-the-scenes lifestyle to know if they do actually perform this like lion and leopard do, this art of killing young members of their same species in order to mate with their mothers. So are we going to have one last showdown here? The clock is ticking, and the intensity, like I say, certainly has lessened, and the breaks that they're having between fights certainly seems to have increased relative to how intense they were earlier on. But that is not to say that we are not still in for some serious action here. Okay, that was both of them vocalizing there, which is good. A little bit of an argument amongst the huffing and puffing. However, despite this little conversation they've had with one another, it hasn't resulted in any Okay, well, just got some research back from Final Control. Thanks, Alex. Alex said there is research and documentation of hippo bulls killing calves, but it's not necessarily the norm, as it may be associated with lions and leopards and the cats. So, like I said, it doesn't surprise me that it does happen and that it would happen, and it has been documented, but it's not necessarily the norm for hippo bulls to kill young calves. So thank you very much for that, Alex. And I hope that answers your question further. I think that was Jan who asked that question about the hippo bulls. Sorry, Deborah. Thanks. Well, I hope that answers your question further, Deborah. I've been permanently checking around behind us for any potential other animals to show you, but it appears that the surroundings are quite quiet of Gowrie Dam. Been hoping that we'd turn on, there'd be a leopard lying near the vehicle, but not yet. We still do have a few more minutes though, where that could happen. Christian on Twitter asks why hippo are not poached even though they have ivory similar to that of an elephant, and it's a good question. I think it's simply because their ivory isn't as impressive and or big as elephant's ivory, therefore making it less productive potentially to poach. A very good question though, and potentially also the end users, the market for specific elephant's ivory is higher than that of hippo ivory, and maybe there are differences, slight differences between the ivory. Even though they both are ivory, it's the same as gold. You get good quality gold and less high quality gold or diamonds, so it could have something to do with the quality of that. But thankfully for the hippos, they are not persecuted by poachers nearly as much as elephants are for their ivory. Vian's just sent through a message to us saying that he needs to watch out because whoever's controlling the camera here, the waterhole camera, is giving Brian a run for his money. So just a little bit of banter between the two cameramen, one who's in the director's chair this morning being Vim, and one who's out here being Brian. So a friendly competition amongst the team members here. Not an easy thing controlling the waterhole camera, because what I didn't realize about it is that you can only program the camera's movements in kind of 4 steps at a time. So if an animal is moving from left to right on a perfect plane, you could just click move to the right 3 times, and in 3 movements it would stagger to the right. But if something's moving in a strange angle, kind of at a 45-degree angle away from the camera or towards it, you'd have to go down right to get that angle that the animal's moving in. I'm not sure if that made any sense to you, but the bottom line is it's not easy to control that waterhole camera. So the zoomies do get well practiced at it and make it look a lot easier than it seems. We've got the pied wagtail here again on the hunt, a few meters from the vehicle. We'll see if it manages to catch anything while these hippos continue to have a standoff. It seems to be wagging its tail a bit better now. Initially it didn't do any tail wagging. And what we want to hope for is that it sees a nice prey out and that it has to run off and chase, run down on foot. Oh, but they are tricky customers for Brian to follow, especially when it darts off like that. Okay, 10 more minutes. What is going to be out there for us? Well, it certainly has been an entertaining morning, and it shall continue to be an interesting situation, this, because we haven't got to the bottom of who the boss is of this dam, but there's 2 hippo here that certainly are trying to establish that between themselves. And will this be the last little bit of confrontation that we see this morning? Wouldn't it be incredible if they do manage to establish who the boss is and the one gets chased away while we're still here? But they have been becoming more and more tolerant of one another. Possibly that's the wrong word. Possibly they're simply just worn out from fighting for the last few hours, and now are both in a situation where they would like to regain as much strength as possible before having another round. Oh, potentially a bit of action. It's the most we've seen in a while. But let's see if it escalates to anything worthwhile, or anything substantial rather. It does go in these waves and phases where it seems like it's almost completely peaceful and tranquil, and then all of a sudden, for a reason unknown to us, they manage to pluck up the energy for another round. Nope. Back to a relatively relaxed state, it appears. It will be very interesting to know exactly what's going on in because anything is possible between the morning and the afternoon drive, even though I am inclined to think that things are calming down here, that even though that may change it. You can also get that, Brian. Nice, beautiful. We both saw the opportunity at the same time, Brian to capture on video and me to capture with the camera of the heron that we've been watching feed, doing a beautiful flight over the hippos' heads and into this dead tree overhanging the dam. They're incredibly pretty birds, the grey herons. Okay, well, everyone seems to be getting comfortable. The heron stopped feeding and perched itself here. The hippo have evidently calmed down. There's one doing a little bit of a territorial display again here that we can see. But it certainly does appear to be less intense than it was before. But folks, yeah, please do follow on the Juma waterhole camera between drives, as anything is possible but with these two. But for some reason I feel they are going to start getting tired, need some time apart from one another, some time to relax, and this afternoon things could heat up again. Well folks, there's just a few minutes to go, so I'd just like to say on behalf of myself and Brian, thank you very, very much for tuning in this morning and for joining us with this interesting hippo interaction that we've been very, very fortunate to see. I must reiterate how lucky we are to have seen the interaction we have between the hippo. In all the years that I've been out here, I haven't seen many hippo fights, and this has certainly been the most intense and the best for viewing. We've got to see them come out the water on 2 different occasions, and that amongst with a little bit of grey heron hunting and the little goslings making it across to the other side of the dam closely. The hippo have been the star of the show this morning, and we'll keep monitoring them closely. Like I say, the waterhole camera will be on them for the course of the day, and by the time the afternoon comes, we will have updates on any further fighting that would have happened here, and then we'll decide whether to come back or leave them alone or go look elsewhere for some other animals. There is a lot of exploring to do, I feel, from myself at least. I haven't been out nearly as much as I would have liked to, so it would be nice to explore Djuma and Arathusa and see what we haven't been, cover some areas where we haven't been for the last few days. But thank you very, very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a unique morning. And from myself and Brian, we will be leaving you with these last few minutes of images of Gowrie Dam on the hippo. They have been the stars of the show, so we will finish on them. Until this afternoon, have a good day. Another false alarm. We've got less than a minute, folks, and I thought there'd be a small chance we'd have to continue airing a live battle, but it appears they have calmed down now, and I think it will be this afternoon that provides us with any more action from these guys.